Hello everyone, we're here, day 2 of the 21 days with Paul and Stephen, and you're welcome to join us. Yes, 21 days, because it's the preface and 20 chapters of the book, Paul and Stephen, and we're here at Kardec Radio Studios, which is located within the headquarters of the Spiritist Society of Virginia, which is 20 some miles away from Washington, D.C., the capital. And yesterday we had an introduction with the preface in which, hello Fabiola and Mary. Hi Mary Hilton. It's been a long time. So today we are in this day 2 of 21 days. Hi Marilda, and it's all about, hi Vanessa, it's about part 1. The title, Afflicted Hearts. Oh, is that how we feel? We feel like that. But wait up, because in this first chapter, we're gonna learn key tips on what to do at the current times post the US election. Okay? We will see that Emmanuel, as a wonderful educator, wrote this book and published through Chico Xavier, the book Paul and Stephen, in the middle of the Second World War. And it's a message for us. In the darkest hours, when we are confused and afflicted, these books are more than just history. They are more than novels. They are true guidelines for safety, emotional safety, spiritual safety, material safety. Okay? So, Afflicted Hearts, chapter 1. I'm going to read the first chapter because it's so poetic. He's describing a scenario in a Greek city that was very outstanding at the time, Corinth, and he's going to describe the scenario to us. The morning dawned joyfully and sunny. Hi, Leo! But the main streets of Corinth were nearly deserted. Blowing in from far away, the usual scented breeze was playing in the air. However, neither the unconcerned smiles of the children nor the normal movement of the luxurious chariots on their daily rounds was able to be seen on the magnificent public streets. Rebuilt by Julius Caesar, the city was the most beautiful jewel of old Achaia and served as the capital of the charming province. After a century of deplorable neglect following its destruction by Mummius, one could no longer find the Hellenic spirit in all its ancient purity within its walls, because in restoring it, the great emperor had transformed Corinth into an important colony of Romans, into which flowed a large number of free men anxious for paid work, or merchants in search of the promise of fortune. Hi, Renata. So, in this first part of the chapter 1, Afflicted Hearts, our dear Emmanuel is describing a scenario that is so similar to what's happening in the world nowadays and in America. People who come, are free, and are willing to build the dream. So, one more reason to read this book, because it's contextualizing what's happening nowadays. Romans found a huge outlet for their passions there, giving themselves over frenziedly to the venomous fragrance of that garden of exotic flowers. It was the year 34. Oh, it's good to have you here too. Thank you, Renata. The whole city had been afflicted by a violent revolt of its oppressed slaves. Yes, that's the feeling nowadays as well. People are like, what's going to happen next in the United States and in the world? Should we be afraid? Should we be afflicted? Hi, Norma. Thank you for joining us. And actually, in this first chapter, we'll find at least three main keys to guide us into life. Hi, Laura. Thank you for joining us. And he talks about the oppression of the people, the slaves, Jews, Jewish people, High Agilis, Jewish versus Romans. And remember, those times, year 34 AD, was worse than nowadays. Because, for example, in the United States of America, we have laws, we have human rights around the world, etc. But back then, people could do whatever they liked. If they had status and money and fame and influence, they could kill whomever they pleased. They could take away the assets of any and every one. So religious oppression was existent, and we had the same intolerance, or worse, much worse than we have nowadays regarding religions. And we had very many social customs that were more dramatic than the ones we have nowadays. Hi, Rita. So he's describing to us that the Roman Empire was taking over the Greek cities, which were intellectual, very wealthy. He's describing Corinth at the time. And he describes particularly a man. Let's see who this man is, because in him we're going to find ourselves, maybe. He says, there was a group of Roman tribunes who were shouting at this man who was passing by, Jewish. The old man, named Joshadab, whose facial features revealed he was Jewish, showed that he was aware of the bullying, we say. He doesn't use the word here, but the ridicule being hurled at him. You see, nowadays many people are in the United States discussing about bullying, the increased levels of bullying after the election. Well, it's something that has always happened. I'm not saying we should just be accustomed to it, but it's something that goes on. It's human nature. There is a reason why people become bullies. And Joshadab was going through it, but he avoided Hyagilson, the military patricians, as if to protect himself by moving along more timidly and humbly in silence. Now I'm going to read to you the dialogue, because it's very important. Sometimes people feel like oppressed and they're like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be afraid. I'm going to be, invisible. And it can be worse, much worse. And the officer, with disrespect and sarcasm, approaches Joshadab and says, your name? And he answered meekly, Joshadab, son of Jared. And why did you not greet the imperial tribunes? Sir, I did not dare. Did not dare? Asked the officer gruffly. And before the old man could explain himself further, the imperial mandatory closed his fists and began pummeling the venerable face with successive, merciless blows. Here, take that. Keep this as a souvenir, blah, blah, blah. My friends, this is Emmanuel. Hi, Luciana, Vero. This is Emmanuel describing such an aggressive approach. Why is he writing this to us? When some people start reading this book, they're like, oh, I can't because it's too much. But remember, Emmanuel, through Chico Xavier, is willing to educate us. So let us keep reading to know what to do when we are afflicted like Joshadab. Because Joshadab is going to show us one pathway, his children another pathway. Let's see which one takes us to a successful approach. The man did not fight back. Of course, he was older. He couldn't. One However, and this is the important part Emmanuel is describing, what are you keeping inside? Maybe when people bully me, I don't say anything. I don't do anything. But he says, Jochebed kept a deep inner revolt in the smoldering, indignant glance he cast at his assailant with grim composure. So that's a question for us, my friends. When people bully us, thank you for the love. Thank you. It makes us so much happier when we're reading this, we're together. But he's telling us, maybe when people bully us, we're not attacking them back, but deep inside. As our dear Kardec shows to us, thank you, friends. We are creating thought forms, the photography of thoughts in the book Genesis, of violence. And Kardec says in the book Genesis chapter 14, if you think of killing a man, you're halfway through it. So we need to think. Oh, but I'm not doing anything. If we don't do any good, Kardec asked the spirits in the Spirit's book, if we do any good, if we don't do any good, but we don't do any bad either, is that a problem? And they said, yes, if you don't do any good, you're doing bad. Thinking bad thoughts is a bad action. It's a bad action. So you see, we need to go. This book is helping us. Emmanuel is saying, Jochebed was silent, but he was feeling coward, like chicken, we say, before the imperial tribunes. And then they say, go home. Now you know you've learned your lesson. His victim gave him a look of anxious bitterness, in which all the pain-filled heartaches of a long time were obvious. And he goes home. Okay. The humiliation he had suffered made him turn his thoughts back to the most trying periods of the history of his people. He is Jewish. And that revolt brought him the rebelliousness and asking, for what reason, for how long would the Jews endure being persecuted by the world's most powerful? For what reason had they always been stigmatized in every corner of the earth as unworthy and wretched? Nonetheless, they sincerely loved that Father of Justice. And that's important. Hi, Renata Santos. They loved that Father of Justice and love who watched from heaven over the greatness of their faith and the everlasting of their destiny. While other peoples had squandered their spiritual strength, trading sacred hopes for expressions of selfishness and idolatry, Israel had kept the law of the one God, making an effort in every circumstance to keep their religious heritage intact, though at the cost of her political independence. But Jochebed was distressed. He was a dedicated husband whom in the past lost his wife and lost parts of his lands. Hi, Ana Luisa. She left him 2 children who were the crown of hope for his laborious existence, Jaziel and Abigail. Oh, adorable spirits. They had grown up under his loving care. And because of them, in the accumulation of his sacred domestic obligation, he felt that the snow of the human pathway had whitened his hair prematurely. He couldn't understand, you're right, Mario, the more education is the solution. And we're going to learn from now on. I'm going to summarize a little bit more of the story in this chapter. So we go to some excerpts of the book. From there on, Jochebed is indignated. He's feeling victimized by justice. He doesn't understand why, being so faithful and compliant to God's laws, he's suffering that much. How many people go through the problems of life and they ask themselves, why am I going through this? Well, look at our dear Jesus, the Master. He put together the planet for us in the name of God, and look what happened to him. And he said, if they did this to me, what are they going to do to you? Friends, we can't escape away from the inevitable pathway of growth, which is about overcoming challenges, not suffering, okay? Hi, Felipe. Oh, thank you for sharing some love. We feel loved and love back to you. Thank you, Marilda. I know we're always in touch. Thank you for your support, Felipe. We need it. We need one another. And Joshadab felt rebellious because he didn't have that feeling. Hi, Fabiana. He didn't. He was feeling, my wife already died. My lands were taken away, part of it. I have been working hard, and they're still humiliating me. So the next day, look what happens. Emmanuel is showing to us that he goes home and still indignated. The spirits already say that's not good for us. If we don't calm the heart out, we're going to be entrapped. And that's exactly what happened to Joshadab. Next day, he wakes up and goes his way, okay? And you know what happens next? Thank you, Rita. What happens next? He sees a group of the military Romans, and he does the opposite of the previous day. He says, hey, hail valorous tribunes of Caesar. Why did he do that? They looked at him and said, what is this? A Jew impudently addressing patricians? Has the condemnable tolerance of the provincial authorities gone so far? We'll just take justice into our own hands. And they started hitting him. Blows once again struck the aching face of the unfortunate man, who had to concentrate all his strength on the will not to fight back in desperation. Can you imagine yourself? Sick and old, you already lost some of your assets, you have to take care of your young adult, children, your wife is no longer here, and you were hit the day before by the patricians, the Roman tribunes, and the next day you do the opposite as they recommended, and you're hit anyway. What do? Many people would say, I'll go crazy and kill somebody so I take revenge. Okay? That's what many people are doing, right? They go there and take revenge, etc. But we're going to know that when we go that pathway, not only us, but people in our family can suffer the consequences. So Emmanuel is educating us in this chapter by telling us that Joshadab made an effort to bear the basket hanging from his trembling arms and staggered away, suppressing the explosion of his extreme despair. Oh, to be old, he thought. And I tell you, my friends, to be old is good because you're more experienced. Some people tell me, I don't like to be old. There must be something good about being old. Why would God allow us to go through it? Experience, greater wisdom, learning greater discipline, learning our limits. Well, it's not that bad. Yeah. At the same time, the symbols of his faith changed his spiritual disposition. And he felt in his heart the old word of the law, you shall not kill. How a high authority, you shall not kill. My friends, there are many people nowadays who take a gun in the United States or in the world, and they claim being Christians, or even people who are not Christians, but they know the Mosaic law, etc., and they go and kill. Justifying, but the law is only one. You shall not kill, period. There's no but. If this happens, you can. No, you can't. Period. Period. And yet, in his view, the divine teachings contained in the voice of the prophets advise him to retaliate, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So he was deeply humiliated, and that's how so many people feel nowadays. Yes, Adilson, my friend, forgiveness, he's saying to us, is the key to free ourselves. Thank you, too. And thank you for being there, bringing these great energies from Central Park, New York. And deeply humiliated and afflicted, and many people are feeling like this. I'm humiliated and I'm afflicted. And my friends, I'll never forget when I was in my first year in the United States, many difficulties as an immigrant, legal immigrant, but still difficult adjusting, I confess. And I remember visiting my family, and I told my father, Dad, sometimes I feel so humiliated. And he turned to me, and I'm the only daughter. I have 4 brothers. I'll never forget. He could have said, yeah, come back home, don't worry about it. I was only 24 years of age. And then he said, you know, if it's humility that you need to learn, go to the United States and learn it. That's the lesson if you think you need to learn, and that's okay. And I thank my father forever, because I've been here for 19 years almost. And thanks to his encouragement, to his support, to my growth, I came back, and he said, go there and fulfill your profession, because I came for professional reasons. He said, go there, fulfill your contract, and then you come back. And I'm forever grateful to him. He never said, oh, you little one, no, come back. No, he said, go and do what you have to do. And if humility is something you need to learn, go learn it. And I'm grateful to my dad for it. Truly grateful. And I think Joshadab, in this moment, he didn't have anybody to tell him that about humility. Because Jesus is the one who actually brought that notion of humility for us, to us. So what did he do? You know what he did next, right? Unfortunately, he knew that the next door neighbor of his land was Licinius Minucius, who was the governor of Old Achaia at the time. And he was the one that took some of his assets away, and he was the one governing those imperial tribunes that hit him. So he put fire in the land. He went back home thinking nobody was going to see, no consequences for his act. But we're going to learn that there is a twist in the story. Unfortunately, when we take that route of a vengeance, revenge, when we try to do this, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and justice with our own hands, the consequences are terrible. So he comes home, and his young girl, Abigail, who was only 18 years of age, beautiful woman, she says, Father, Father, what is the blood? And she says, my dear child, my child. And he opens his heart, and Jaziel comes in, his son. And here we learn the lesson, another lesson for us, not only about what we're thinking and the importance of controlling that, but in managing our thoughts, thought substitution. We only stop thinking negative thoughts if we think positive ones. Some people think, I'm going to stop thinking bad thoughts. I'm not going to think of it. You're thinking of it. It doesn't go that way. You need to think of positive ones. You don't want to think a bad thought? Think of a good thought. And that's why we have these books, because these books train our minds to the right direction. It's like going to the gym. When we read these books, the Spiritist books, it's a wonderful gym, and you don't have to do much of physical work, but just holding sometimes heavy books. But you don't have to. Now we have e-books. You don't have to hold anything, computer. And you can lay down. You can listen to books. You know, Kardec Radio has audiobooks too. Just go to KardecRadio.com. We have many audiobooks there going on, and you can listen to them, and you don't have to even hold a pen or a computer or a mouse or a phone. It's very easy. Now, here, Jeziel looks at him and says, "Take heart, Father. Our God is just and wise. Let us trust in his protection." Friends, post-United States election, let's hear the words again. Our God is just and wise. Let us trust in his protection. Exactly, Adilson. We only stop negative thoughts when we think positive ones. That's the key. That's the rule. Negative thoughts are only stopped when we think positive ones. Joana de Angelis reminds us of that, and we need to share the news with everyone around us, even if they're not spiritists. It's a law of life. Even science already realizes it. You only substitute bad memories and traumatic ones by creating healthier and good ones. Some people, they're stuck in bad memories, and we say, "Get over it, let it go," almost singing to them, let it go, let it go. But people don't let go just like that. We need to focus on positive memories. How do you do it? Without charity, there's no salvation. Meaning, when you reach out to people, you create good memories, you displace bad memories. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. Even science proves that to us. I have the paper, which was published last year in a scientific journal, showing how we overcome traumatic memories by creating healthier ones. So we need to focus on doing good, and by doing good, we're going to feel good, and we're going to forget about the bad. That's how it is. It takes effort, but it's possible. So Jeziel is not Christian. Remember, they are Jewish. And that's funny because people think that the principles we learn are all new, and Jesus said, "I didn't come to destroy the law. I came just to fulfill it." Remember, he was Jewish himself. Religious tolerance? No, religious love, religious embracing. It's not only about putting up with anybody. It's about appreciation. God's laws are everywhere. No wonder Kardec, in the beginning introduction of the Gospel according to Spiritism, he told us these principles, Spiritist principles, are universal. We're not creating anything new. So when we see all the other philosophies and religions, we appreciate them. We respect and even cherish them because it's part of us. It's part of God's love on the earth. It's very important. So Jochebed contemplated his son from head to toe and gazed into his benevolent and calm eyes. So now we are learning the future Stephen, Jeziel. 21 days with him. Amazing. Calm, benevolent eyes. Can you picture it? We need to picture it. We need it today. A calm, benevolent eyes looking at us and saying to us, "Hi, Tanya Stewart. Thank you for joining us." Take heart, telling us. In Portuguese, bom ânimo. Bom ânimo. Take heart. Our God is just wise. Let us trust in his protection. And then Jochebed, the father, is like, "Son, the Lord is full of justice." How many people are saying this nowadays? "But as his chosen ones, the children of Israel also must exercise justice. Could we be just if we were to forget the offenses against us? I could not rest if my conscience was not clear for having fulfilled my duties. I must point out the wrongs to which I have fallen victim, both now and in the past. So tomorrow I shall go to the legate to settle my score." Now let's recall Jeziel with benevolent and calm eyes turns to his father. Yes, take heart, Marilda, saying, "Are you perchance going to the questor Licinius Minucius in hopes of a legal settlement?" How many of us are like, I'm going to talk to that person. They're bullying me. And you think by talking to them kindly, they're going to change. That's sometimes not the case. What about what happened the last time, Father? Wasn't he the same patrician who confiscated your large estate and threw you into prison? Can't you see that he has the power of evil in his hands? Shouldn't we fear a new attack to extort what little we have left? Ay, 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 ay. Joshedeb looked deeply into his son's eyes, but according to the rigidity of his character, and accustomed to seeing his will through the end, he said almost dryly, as you know, I have both old and new scores to settle, and in conformance with the edict tomorrow, I shall take advantage of the opportunity the provincial government has given us. Father, I beg you, do not seek the recourse. Well, Jeziel and Abigail. Hi, Tanya. Yeah, it's a great book. Paul and Stephen, thank you for reminding us. You're right. So, both children are seeing more clearly, and they're like, Father, the scriptures, let's not forget. And humbly, Jeziel reminds his father. He says, Father, I have no right to persuade you otherwise, but let us see what God's word tells us about what you're thinking right now. Beautiful attitude. Emmanuel is teaching us through Jeziel what to do in critical times before I impulsively claim for justice. Sometimes in our own home, when we're being justice in our own home by family members and relatives who are cruel sometimes, who despise us, don't understand us. And we're like, I'm going to talk to them, and they're going to see it. Enough is enough. How should we behave? He says, take the teachings that come from God. Let's see. So they open the Torah at the time, which for us is kind of like the Old Testament, okay? It is. And he read from Proverbs, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, nor resent his rebuke. For the Lord disciplines those he loves, as a father disciplines the son in whom he delights. That's the message for us. If we are going through the times we're going through, it is God disciplining our hearts. Let's be easy on God and say, like a good student, okay, if you want me to go through this challenge, I will go through it with joy. I know physically we may be torn apart by the demands of life, but deep inside we feel happy and compliant. You're right, Adilson. He's saying, let's think what God's words are thinking about what you're telling. We're thinking, saying, doing right now. You're right. We need to think in Proverbs, in the Old Testament. The good spirits already brought to us that God loves us and is educating us. When he says discipline, he says educating the heart. How are we ever going to become meek and calm and benevolent and patient and perseverant if we're not facing the challenges, my friend? So next time a challenge shows up, let us look at it with kind eyes and say, thank you very much. In here lies my transformation, my growth, my strength. If God loves me and is allowing me to go through this, it's because God trusts in me. Let me trust God and allow the love of God to go through us. So Jeziel read it to him, but the father said, I acknowledge the warning of the writings, my son, but I will not resign myself to injustice. And as I have decided, I shall take my claim to the relevant authorities. That's how many people behave nowadays. Even spiritists, they know of the teachings. They're like, no, no, no. Enough is enough. And they create a war. At work, even in spiritist centers, no respect, no kindness, etc. So we need to think in our families, at work, in our communities, everywhere. Hold on. We are not Superman. We're not Batman raising ourselves against injustice. Only God is just. You know why? We know it. Let's make a test, okay? A quiz for us, quiz for the soul. I love this, quizzes, as a teacher, I love quizzes. It's funny. So let's do a quiz today. When Kardec asked the spirits, law of love, charity, and justice, in the Spirit's book, he asked, what is the concept? What is the definition of justice for the spirits? And they say, respect everyone's rights. Respecting everyone's rights. So sometimes we say, I am just, I'm being fair, but only God is just. Because God respects everyone's rights. Do I respect everybody's rights? I'm not just yet. Because when I see people taking over the leadership of a nation, I become rebellious. I start sending negative thoughts. And I create rebelliousness. So I'm not just. I'm not respecting people's rights. But you may say, but Vanessa, if we don't do anything, I say, well, but we need to be like Jesus, our guide and model. Don't you think he knew Caesar, the emperor of the Roman Empire, was even worse? Yes. Have you ever heard of Jesus creating a rebellion against Caesar? No, he even said, give Caesar what is Caesar's and God what is God's. Chico Xavier lived during a dictatorship in Brazil. Have you ever heard him say anything against it or claiming that he was pro-dictatorship? Neither one. But he said, and it's in the book Money, by Emmanuel, before we demand anything from the government, we need to ask ourselves what we're doing in our lives. So justice is truly, as Adilson is reminding us, according to the spirits in the Spirit's book, respect for everyone's right. So what happens next? And I'm going to fix something I said before about the story. That's when Jochebed next day goes, talks to Lucinia Minucius. There is the whole dialogue in chapter 1. And everything goes so bad. Because Lucinius Minucius looks at him and says, oh, really? You're upset? So now I'm confiscating everything you have, even the house you have. So, as his children said, don't go there, it's going to be worse. They lost everything. From now on, they're homeless. And it's in his way back to home. He's so rebellious. He wants to avenge. He puts fire in the neighboring lands, which were Licinius Minucius' lands. Some of his men were killed. And that's when the problem begins. Why? Because he thought nobody saw it. But some saw it. They knock on their door. And they arrest Jochebed, Abigail, and Jaziel. The end of this chapter, at the end of the chapter, he is telling with tears, heavy tears in his eyes, that he actually put fire. And the dialogue between Jochebed and Jaziel and Abigail is the most moving. It's about a desperate father who forgot about God's love and is reminded by his own children, Jaziel and Abigail, that God loves us and we don't need to take justice with our own hands, my friends, nowadays in the United States and in the world. Let's forget about making justice. Let us open our hearts in love. And Jeziel looks at his children, and Jeziel at his father and says, "Don't weep, father. Count on us. Count on us." And then he says, "Father, why did you lift your arm in vengeance? Why didn't you wait for the action of divine justice?" Friends, never ever take revenge. It's easy to say when we are tested, it's so hard. But we need to recall Jesus is our guide and model, and He's asking us, discipline our hearts. Be easy on the hands of God who is educating us. Let us kindly look at God inside of us and say, I go through this with joy in my heart because you're teaching me so many things. And let us learn it and endure the challenge knowing that it shall pass, my friends. Everything passes for those who study and comply and observe the laws of God. We cannot postpone the achievements of the Spirit by creating indignation and rebelliousness in our hearts. Hi, Joyce. Hi, Tia Abby. Beijo. Okay, so it is written in the commandments, you shall not steal. But Father, says Jeziel, above all other commandments, God has carved the teachings of love. We are to love Him above everything else with all our heart and mind. My friends, Emmanuel is going to tell us that Jeziel was able to share these teachings of God's love with his father because he learned it especially with his mom. And here Emmanuel in the first chapter of the book is reminding us of the vital element of spiritual education in childhood. Please do not postpone it for later. If you're pregnant, bring spirituality to your baby, to your toddler, to your children, to your teenagers. Don't force anything but love God, because that's the mission of parents. And Jeziel was only strong, and Abigail as well, because they were taught their connection with God so they could withstand the blows of life. Life's not supposed to be easy because we're in the school of the earth. It's supposed to be challenging, but that's okay. And gratitude for our parents for sure. And remember, whatever we do, as Adilis is reminding us, it's going to affect everyone in our lives. Look at the book Action and Reaction. The first chapters talk about a man, Action and Reaction by André Luiz, through Chico Xavier. There we have a man who killed his brothers to take the whole inheritance. And then the two brothers in the spiritual realm become his obsessors. He avenges the brother by finding a way to kill the wife, and then the brother is killed. He's already imprisoned in the spiritual realm, but because of his son, who inherited everything the family had, for the next 30 years, the uncles are obsessing their nephew, who did not do anything to them in this life, and creating a major obsession. Read the book Action and Reaction. How often our children, our grandchildren, our family is going to be affected by our own actions. It's part of the game of life. And I say game with kindness because we need to learn how to live in this life. So we need to observe ourselves. There is a message by Emmanuel in a book. We translated the message and published in the Spiritist magazine. And we had the whole program at Kardec Radio. And you can go there, kardecradio.com. There's a search bar. We have the programs from the last 5 years and a half there. If you go there and type in spiritual immunization, you're going to listen to the whole message by Emmanuel saying we need to take spiritual vaccines. And what is it? Do not create more problems for your life. Let people think what they want. Let they say what they want. Let they do what they want. You know, sometimes just being like Nietzsche, like you say, the philosophy of warm, like we're nobody. We go along and do everything we need without attracting much dissension. Not saying we should be shy when we have to do something right, but saying sometimes in our daily lives, let people think what they want to think. We don't have to play the right person all the time. Let them be. Exercising justice. Let people be who they want to be. It's okay. We're not going to die. We're not going to die just because they're thinking what they want. So give people right to be who they are is the greatest spiritual immunization we can have for everything and everywhere in our lives. So Jeziel keeps saying to his dad, how can we display our devotion to the Almighty God who is in heaven while destroying his work? When we're destroying somebody's life, somebody's image, we're destroying God's work. When we're gossiping, when we're slandering, we are destroying God's work. In the case of the fire, we must not only consider the fact that we have shown our mistrust in God's justice. And at the end of this chapter, unfortunately, they are imprisoned. But we'll see in chapter 2 what's going to happen next once they're in prison. We're going to wrap up with the beautiful prayer of David that Abigail opened in the psalm taught by her mother. Again and again he wraps up the chapter telling about how Abigail and Jeziel are strong because they were well educated by the mother, spiritually speaking. Dear mothers of the world, don't forget you have a mission, and the mission is not to give milk to your children only. It's giving the milk of life, which is their full connection with God, conscious connection. Okay? You want to read it? We need this prayer too, right? If your heart is afflicted, my friend, remember God loves you, loves me. He's taking care of you. He's taking care of us. It's okay. And the beautiful prayers. Can you visualize Abigail? She's kneeled down, an emotional voice. They kind of sing the verses. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall lack nothing. He makes me lie down in great pastures. He gently leads me to quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me on paths of righteousness, out of love for his name. Even if I were to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I would fear no evil, for you are with me, God. Your rod and your staff comfort me. You prepare a love feast for me. In the presence of my enemies, you anoint my head with balm. My cup overflows with joy. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for many days. Can you feel it? Jesus said to Nicodemus, it's not enough to know the scriptures, it's important to feel them. Can we feel what it is to dwell in the house of God? Let us feel his love and be assured that any affliction goes away. It goes away. Let us just feel the loving embrace of the good spirits who brought this amazing book as recipes for wellness. And tomorrow we'll be here, with God's permission, at 11 a.m., talking about chapter 2, 21 days with Paul and Stephen. Thank you so much, Adilis, Adils, and all the friends here for the love and for your kindness. Until tomorrow.